Welcome back! Today we're talking about two more scenes from Goethe's Faust, Evening, Clean Little Room, and On a Walk. When we last left off, Faust was intent on getting his hands on a young girl named Gretchen. Or Marguerite is really her full name, but we usually call her Gretchen, which is the diminutive or short version. We open this scene with Marguerite sitting in her room and braiding her hair and thinking about Faust. Now, when we last saw her, he was a little bit forward, and she brushed him off and walked away. And we thought, well, that girl has some good sense. But now we're beginning to see what she's like when she's alone. And we find out she didn't entirely brush him off. It was a little flattering the way he was hitting on her. I'd give a deal if I could say who was that gentleman today. I liked his look and how he spoke. He must be born of noble folk. That I could tell from his brow and eyes. Would he have been so forward otherwise? So even though she knew it wasn't a good idea to walk with Faust, at the same time, she's flattered that a guy who looks like him is hitting on her. But she leaves her room, and then immediately afterward, in enters Mephistopheles and Faust to sneak around in here. Mephistopheles gives Faust a little bit of room to look at everything himself, as he makes the passing comment that, wow, this girl's really tidy. And Faust talks for about 2 pages as he examines all the room. And here we begin to see a rather interesting transformation. It's also worth it, perhaps, to make a comparison between this scene and another famous scene of a creepy man sneaking around in an innocent girl's bedroom, which is from the Shakespeare play Cymbeline. In the play Cymbeline, Iachimo has made a bet with Posthumus, who's in exile, that he can seduce Posthumus' wife, the sweet, innocent Imogen. But when Imogen refuses Iachimo's advances, Iachimo decides to cheat. He hides in a box and has it brought into Imogen's room, and then he sneaks out in the middle of the night and examines her room and her sleeping form and jots down all the details so he has evidence to bring back to Posthumus to prove that he has slept with Imogen. In that scene, we have a creepy, dark predator figure who is feasting on the innocence and beauty of this young woman. There are a lot of interesting similarities between the two passages, and I like in my classroom to compare the speech that Faust says here to the speech that Iachimo says as he's looking at Imogen. Although both question their own intentions and are a little bit taken aback by the innocence and beauty of the person they're examining, Faust is a little bit more dramatic in his change. He starts by welcoming the evening, again examining the room and seeing the beauty of it all, how sweet it all is, and then he notices an armchair which he sits down in. Receive me, who from many generations flown have welcomed many a glad or mournful pilgrim, to think about this patriarchal throne, time and again has swarmed a throng of children. I seem to see my little darling stand, as she round-cheeked with joys of Christmas thrilling, devoutly kissed her grandsire's withered hand. I sense, dear girl, your very spirit of plenitude and order all about, benignly counseling domestic merit. What's odd here is, as he comes into this room as a predatory creep, he examines it and begins to think about her as an innocent, sweet little child experiencing the joy of Christmas, her domesticity and her simplicity and her beauty. And as he's sitting in the chair, he's envisioning this Christmas holiday with an old grandfather sitting in the chair and the young girl coming up to kiss her grandfather's hand. It's as if he's putting himself in the place of the old grandfather, and she is this child, this sweet, innocent child. Which is very strange considering his intentions when he entered the room. But he moves over to her bed and lifts the bed curtain to look at her bed, which we would expect perhaps given his intentions, but his thoughts and reflections as he looks at the bed are perhaps a bit more unexpected. Here nature did you nurse with gentle showers of dreams, this angel native born. Here came its bosom gently heaving with tender life, the child in bloom, and here in chaste and sacred weaving God's image ripened in the bloom. As he looks at the bed, he thinks about her as a child sleeping here, and growing up and the way she's grown up over the years. Oh, how fast they grow up. But that's really strange talk for a man with his intentions. I mean, why did he come here in the first place? It's because he wants to seduce Gretchen and destroy her. In fact, at this point, Faust suddenly catches himself and realizes that he's changing. And you? Do you recall your quest? How deeply all my soul's astir. What do you want? Why is your heart oppressed? Ah, wretched Faust, no longer what you were. Am I enthralled to fairy fragrance here, impelled to dally at my ease, in dream of love? I melt and disappear. Are we but sport to any passing breeze? If she this very instant were to come, how you would expiate your desecration. Big Thomas Woe would shrink into Tom Thumb, swept to her feet in adoration. Faust has changed. He no longer feels like he just wants to use up Gretchen and throw her away. Suddenly he's become, well, in love with her. Okay, so we could argue about the sincerity of his love, but he no longer feels just pure physical desire for her. Now he feels very overwhelmed by her and like he wants to throw himself at her feet in adoration. Which sounds a lot more like the old Faust we used to know. What's going on here? Well, maybe it's the charm and innocence of Gretchen and her effect that is fixing his weird behavior in the last scene. Or maybe it's more simple, maybe it's just the potion wearing off, the side effects of the potion wearing off. In any case, he's beginning to sound a lot more like his old self. Very emotional, very interested in beauty and ideals. Mephistopheles charges into the room and says, "Okay, she's coming, we gotta get out of here, let's go!" And Faust's reply is very Faustian. "Off, never to return, I'm gone." And Mephistopheles just doesn't even react to that, because I mean, what do you say to that? But Faust has gotten to the point where he just wants to let go of it all and run away and never bother Gretchen again. Of course, that's short-lived. Mephistopheles hands him the present that he was supposed to hide in the room and says, "Here it is, here's the present I got for you, let's go ahead and hide it in the closet and get out of here." And Faust, holding it completely wishy-washy, says, "Oh, should I? What should I do? What should I do? I don't know what to do." And so Mephistopheles just takes it and shoves it in the cabinet and says, "All right, let's go." Faust becomes completely hampered by this transformation and change in him, and he no longer can make any decisions at all, and Mephistopheles just has to do it all for him. The second half of the scene, though, is interesting because we get a lot more about Gretchen and her character. As she enters the room, it feels very uncomfortable and hot, and when she opens the window, it's not so bad outside, but she feels uncomfortable and, a little weird, kind of like you feel alone in your house at night. But she brushes it off, and then she begins to change clothes while singing a song. The song is the King of Thule song, and the King of Thule song is about a king who had a woman who truly loved him who gave him a cup as she died. And he held on to that cup every day and used it at every meal, and he constantly drank out of that cup. And at the end of his life, he gave all of his lands and possessions and everything he owned to his heir, but not the cup. He drank out of it one last time and then chucked it in the ocean so no one else could have it. The idea is undying love. To have something that matters so much to you because it came from that special person that you'll never let it go. The King of Thule loved that woman throughout his entire life, even after she died. Now, what does that mean and why does it matter? Well, sometimes it's interesting to examine people's psyche based upon the songs that they like to hear. Here she is singing a song about undying love, about a love that lasts forever. And we see her singing about this in the same moment that Faust is pursuing her. And Faust, whose intentions are not very permanent or very eternal, is a threat to her ideas of love. She thinks of love idealistically, as an eternal thing between two people. And Faust was going to use her and then let her go. Is he going to be the kind of person who shatters her idealism about love? It's also interesting to note that in this scene she's undressing, and it leads to the moment when she opens the cabinet to get out some new clothes and finds the jewels, but it's also symbolic. When someone is undressing, they are taking off what covers them, they're taking off what protects them, they're taking off what obscures them from the world. There's a strong sense of vulnerability here and innocence. Here she is opening herself up in the midst of a room where we sense a deep threat and danger. She's opening up her heart, believing in love as a permanent and eternal thing, while these lurking forces are threatening to destroy her. But then she pulls out the little casket of jewelry and opens it up and looks at it, and wonders where it came from. Well, obviously. She wonders if her mother took it in for security for someone, and she opens it up. The jewels are beautiful, and she doesn't really know what to do. She tries them on and looks at it and thinks about how beautiful they are. And then she reflects on the tension between the rich and the poor, between beauty and plainness. And she notices that within this tension, really only the rich have the luxury of being beautiful. The poor don't really have the opportunity and leisure to make themselves beautiful. They don't have the means to pretty themselves up. She concludes by saying, "For gold contend, on gold depend all things and men, poor us." So we see that even though she's depicted as being very innocent and pure, there are some things that have an allure to her. There are some things that tempt her. It's the desire to be something more than she is. She desires that life of elegance. She desires to be considered beautiful and to be admired by others. And perhaps that's one of her flaws that's going to lead to disaster later on. Immediately after this scene is a short scene called On a Walk, where Mephistopheles is very, very angry, and he tells what became of the jewels. The scene opens with Mephistopheles spewing and spitting insults. Mephistopheles says, "I swear I'd send myself straight to the devil if I were not a devil as it is." And what's made him so angry? He describes how Gretchen showed the jewels to her mother and how her mother immediately sensed that this was not a good thing, it needs to be gotten rid of. Her mother had scarce laid eyes on it and straightway threw a shivering fit. "That woman's nose is mighty clever, it's stuck in the prayer book forever, and with each mortal thing can tell profane from sacred by the smell." It's almost as if Gretchen's mom can sniff out evil. And so her mother calls in the priest, and the priest is happy to take the jewels away from them. There's a bit of religious and political commentary here by Goethe. He says, "The church has superb digestion, has swallowed whole countries without question, and never suffered from stomach pains." Although these jewels might have an evil influence on Gretchen, it's easy for the priest to take them and absorb them into the wealth of the church. Gretchen is really saddened by the loss of her jewels, and, as according to Mephistopheles, sits there all distraught, and knows not what she would or ought, thinks day and night of that display, still more of him, by whom it came her way. They have had an effect on her, and she has been influenced by them. She really enjoyed having them for the brief time she did. And so Faust immediately wants Mephistopheles to go find some even better jewels and bring them to Gretchen. And Faust has no problem bossing Mephistopheles around at this point. That's it for this time. Next time we're going to look at some scenes where Mephistopheles arranges a meeting between Faust and Gretchen. The Disney song for this section is Be Our Guest. He's obsessed with his feelings in his breast. With the devil as your wingman, you'll be sure to get the best. Belle du jour, hot hors d'oeuvre, why I only live to serve. Try this Gretchen, she's delicious. You can follow all your wishes. You can sing, you can dance, you can really find romance. And you know I never give you second best. Since Gretchen's on your menu, take a glance and then you'll be obsessed. He's obsessed. Life is so unnerving for a devil who's not serving. He's not whole without a soul to feast upon. Ah, those good old days when plague was raging. So many tortured souls to prey upon. So long you've been moaning, sobbing, whining, crying, groaning. I need exercise, a chance to use my skill. Most days you quote poetry at the moon. Flabby, old, and lazy, she walked in and whoops-a-daisy! He's obsessed, maybe it should be confessed. I got bored and bet the Lord his soul be mine, he'll be distressed. First there's his soul, then there's she. Gretchen's soul looks fine to me. While the poor girl you'll be wooing, lake of brimstone I'll be brewing. Get warm, piping hot, heaven can't save you from the spot. So I'm one, yes, with myself I'm quite impressed. And so you'll see it's true, get not one soul but two, for he's obsessed. Tonight you'll share the fires, but for now she's all yours. Be my guest. Thanks for watching. You can click up here to watch the previous video, click here to watch the next video, or click down here to subscribe. I'll see you next time.